everybody, Mike Beer here with a look at the second of two major graded stakes races up at Woodbine on Sunday. Race number 10 is the Grade 2 Nearctic Stakes for sprinters going 6 furlongs on the turf course. Big field of 10 here. Some really nice turf sprinters in this race, though. A very well-matched field, I felt like. They drew another nice competitive field for this Grade 2 race. Let's take a look at the field right now. Just a lot of different ways to go in here. I suppose the field, you have to say, is led by the number 9 Town Cruise, who is cutting back off of the biggest win of his career most recently in the Grade 1 Woodbine Mile last month on September 18th, where he just got right to the front and never really looked back in there. Did not have to go a fast pace, and he had plenty left in the stretch to pull off a little bit of an upset there. He was 8-1. He earned a big 104 Beyer speed figure, winning at the mile. They are going to now cut him back to sprint in this race, something that he has not done so far as a 6-year-old. This is a very lightly raced 6-year-old. He's in the best form of his career right now, and they're going to try to cut him back in distance here and see how that works. He has won sprinting in the past, but that was very early on in his career. He's the 2-1 morning line favorite, and he is the horse to beat in here, but boy, this is no easy spot for a horse like him, and it does sort of feel like Town Cruise is going to have to come back and be every bit as good in this spot as he was in winning that Grade 1 last time, because this is a good field of horses that he is facing. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector. Town Cruise is a horse who, wants to use his speed and wants to be part of the pace. I'm assuming they're going to come out of there running. We'll see if, cutting back to 6 furlongs works against him at all here as he sprints for the first time so far in 2021. The pace projector believes that the number 8, Momos, is going to be able to outrun Town Cruise to the early lead. That's certainly possible. Momos is a very fast turf sprinter. This is a horse who, in every one of his races so far this year, has just been out there using his speed, going to the front. He's run pretty well in 2 of his last 3 races in particular. His last 3 starts have all come in stakes races sprinting on the grass, and in 2 of those, they really used his speed to put him on the front in those races. He wound up battling through the stretch and both the My Frenchman at Monmouth over yielding ground and most recently in the Allied Forces at Belmont going 6. He just could not hold on at the end. He ran very well both times. He could not hold on at the end. He does sort of feel like a horse who, shipping up here to try this very long stretch of this Woodbine turf course, it could really work against Momos, but he does have good speed. He is in good form, and he's a big price on the morning line. If you want to take a chance with him, I do think Town Cruise, again, I think he is going to go forward in this race. And I think the most interesting horse from a pace perspective anyway, perhaps from just a form perspective as well, is the number 6 Turn Decide, because this is a horse who, for his prior trainer last year as a 3-year-old, had plenty of speed, and they used it in his races. They would put him right up close. He didn't have to be on the lead, but he wanted to be up there sort of pressing the leaders, and he actually had really good form. He wound up winning a couple of stakes races at the end of last year, sprinting on the grass, and he just looked like a real up-and-comer in this turf sprint division. He was sold prior to making his 4-year-old debut, and to say that he's been a disappointment for his new connections would be a massive understatement. Turn Decide has run 3 times since Mark Cassidy has taken over for this new training group, and this horse has been, to put it mildly, he's just been terrible in all 3 of his starts. I do think there are some excuses that you could make for this horse, and we're going to get into that a little bit more in a little bit here. But I think he's another horse who I think you want to keep in mind. He has enough speed to go forward in this race and to get a better trip than he's gotten in either of his last 2 starts. And I just wonder if they're going to finally use it, because last time they decided, he had a big excuse 2 starts back getting out of the gate. Last time they did not use his speed, and I think that was a mistake. We'll see if they go back to more aggressive tactics. I think it could make a difference in this race and give Turn Decide a better chance to win. Let's start down on the rail, though, as far as the major contenders go. The number 1 Admiralty Pier. Yeah, I do think he's a major contender in this race. He's just a really versatile horse, very cool horse. He has a lot of speed, but he doesn't need the lead. He's been very effective both routing and sprinting on the grass. It feels like the kind of horse you can just do whatever you want with him, and he shows up and he runs every time, and that includes his most recent start in the Grade 1 Highlander back at the end of August. Let's take a look at the replay of this right now, because this is him cutting back to sprint for the first time in over a year in this Grade 1 race. And it was very interesting to see Antonio Gallardo rate the break in this race, because this is a horse who had been using his speed going longer. Most recently, they rated him right from the start here, and they took him all the way back to last. He trails to the top of the stretch. They swing him to the outside, and he just comes home with a very game finish here. This pace was not particularly fast And Admiralty Pier finishes very game. He's making up ground all the way. He's never really catching Silent Poet, the horse who wins this race on the lead. But this is a good performance, another good performance for Admiralty Pier. And again, it was the first time they sprinted him since the prior summer, back in July of 2020 in the Grade 2 Connaught Cup. He ran really well in that race as well. 98 Beyer speed figure, finishing a very close second again in that spot. He's just a really cool horse. He's the kind of horse I feel like you could easily make a case for and bet in this race. I don't know if the 7-2 morning line's the right price on him. I'd prefer to get a little bit better than that. But I do think he's a major player in this race, and I do have him in my mix. Let's move back to Town Cruise, who is the morning line favorite. I guess he's the horse to beat at 2-1. Mostly, listen, his form overall, since they've come back off the layoff this summer, his form overall is very good. He's won 3 of his 4 starts. He finished second in the other, the Grade 2 King Edward. He's run well in those races, but he's just controlled the pace in every single one of them. It just feels like it's going to be a lot harder for him to do that this time. We'll throw up the replay right now of that Woodbine mile last month where he just got absolutely loose on a slow pace and had plenty left in the stretch to wire this field. Several of these same runners who were back in here also cutting back in distance were behind him that day. I'm not going to knock this horse. His form's very good, and he definitely does feel like he's in the best form of his career. But man, cutting him back to 6th in here in a race with other speed and expecting him to come back and run another good race, I feel like that might be something that's a lot to ask for Town Cruise, especially if these other horses are going to his inside. Maybe it won't matter. Maybe his recent form's just too good and he'll win again. This is the kind of horse I'm looking to bet against in this race, though, especially if he's at that 2-1 morning line. That they have him at. He could win. I would rather have other horses in there. And I do think a couple of the horses, that sort of finished behind him in that Woodbine mile last time have a real chance to turn the tables on him, including the number 3 Olympic Runner. This horse got into a little bit of traffic. I don't want to make a huge excuse for him. They took him back off the pace early in that race. And again, the pace worked against him as well because it wasn't fast. But he got into a little bit of traffic through the stretch. He lost a spot there at about mid-stretch while he was looking to alter course to get into the clear, steadied a little bit. And then he raced on late. The trip was far from ideal for Olympic Runner. I thought his prior win 2 starts back when he beat Town Cruise in the King Edward was a really good performance. He got a good trip that day, but I thought he ran really well in that race. And prior to that, when they sprinted him 7 furlongs in the Connaught Cup, he was beaten by Avies Flatter, who's also in here. But this horse, I thought, was probably best that day as well in the Connaught Cup. He got into a little bit of stretch trouble in that spot, and he got clear way too late. Avies Flatter had to jump on him, and he just could not get up, but he ran really well. Olympic Runner's in very good form in this race. He's a horse who is, to me, perfectly fine either sprinting, probably up to a mile. I feel like a mile is probably as far as he wants to go. But I think he's fine sprinting as well. And if they go in front of him, they feel like there could be pace in here. I think you're going to see this horse running at the end of this race. And he's a major player that I want to be using. The number 4 is White Flag. He's 5-1 on the line. This is more of a back class kind of a horse. He's run well at Woodbine several times in the past. He's a multiple stakes winner sprinting on the turf back in New York. You have to go back to 2018 and 2017 to get to those races. He's had some real trouble putting races together since then. Only 2 starts in 2019 and then only 2 starts in 2020. He's now 7 years old, but most recently he came off of a very long layoff. He was away for over 13 months when he returned, going 6.5 furlongs in an allowance race here at Woodbine, making his first start for trainer Roger Effield. He ran well in that race, sat out in the clear the entire way, came wide to the stretch and drove that field down to win with a 94 Beyer speed figure. He ran very well in that race, and he's got the back class to contend here. He's another horse who, if they go in front of him, he's going to, appreciate having some pace to run at in this race. I don't think I'd take the 5-1 morning line on him, but he's certainly a horse who I feel like could contend in this race. The other horse that I just want to go back to and touch on here is Turned Aside, because I think it's he's the real question in this race. I think there's a real way to look at him and just say, Turned Aside can't run anymore, and I don't want any part of this horse. I just think it's very interesting that these connections come right back to try another major race with him, because he just feels like the kind of horse who ran so poorly last time in the Grade 1 Highlander that you wouldn't think he'd come right back in the Arctic, but they are coming back with him in this race. I think that might be a good sign for him. It feels like he certainly appears to be training forwardly again into this race, and I just feel like they might have made a mistake last time by trying to rate this horse. He actually got out of the gate fine in there, but they did not send him down towards the inside. They took him back and sort of sat him on the rail behind horses for a long way in there. he made it down to about, mid-stretch. He was never winning that race. He finally just totally gave way in the stretch and finished last. He didn't run well last time, but I know that he's better than that. And that was off the layoff as well. His prior start in the Shakertown at Keeneland, I thought he lost all chance at the start. He just got nailed at the start of that race and wound up far back in the pack early. Never really made any kind of a run after that. But I thought he had a big excuse that day. His first start for these connections came going 5 at Tampa. That's a little short for him. He dueled the pace with an informed horse and got a little tired. But that race wasn't terrible. It's obviously a real question of whether or not he can get back to one of his good races. But I'll tell you something. If he does get back to one of his good races, he can beat this field. This is a horse who was a really good 3-year-old and felt like he could really improve as a 4-year-old. Obviously, that hasn't happened. I wonder if it happens here. Turn to Side is 20-1. I think they'll get more aggressive with him in this race. And just because there was nobody else in the race that I really loved, the other horses for me were down towards the inside. Admiralty Pier, the 1, and the number 3 Olympic Runner. They're the other 2 horses I want to use. But it just feels like Turn to Side. He's going to be a very big price in this race. I'm going to keep the faith and give him one more chance in here and just see if he can run it all anymore. If he can't, so be it. I'll lose a little money on this horse. But I'm going to take Turn to Side to win the grade 2 Nearctic at a price. I went 6, 1, 3, and 4 in here. But this is a very, very good race. I think a lot of different horses can win here. And I think the idea might just be to play against this morning line favorite as he cuts back in distance out of a huge win for him. We'll see if he can back it up. The grade 2 Nearctic, it's race number 10 up at Woodbine on Sunday, and it's a good one. The approximate post time is 5:44 Eastern time. Good luck.